runners, let's talk about some things you hear about kind of in the running, in the running circles, and then you wonder like, how much should I listen to? So one of the things, like I'm going to call it the myths you hear of running. One is about, I want to say strength training and stretching. These are two things that we go back and forth on all the time in the running community. Do I need to stretch? Do I stretch before I run? Do I stretch after I run? Same with strength training. Will doing strength make me slower? Am I going to carry too much weight? So these are questions that honestly I've been hearing and talking about for over 30 years. And by the way, in the beginning, it was very divided. Like runners just did running and strength people just did strength. And there was really very little mix. And then of course now it's so common to do both, right? And it makes sense. You want to do strength training, you want to do endurance training. So let's talk about for running though, specifically for running, you really need a minimal amount of strength training. However, it needs to be intentional. So for running, for example, you don't need to do any kind of bodybuilding, right? You don't want to add size because then you have to carry that for your run. So you want to do muscle work that makes sense for you to hold your body weight when you run. So instead of kind of targeting specific muscles, think about doing full body movements. And this, of course, will include big movements like squats, of course, lunges, single leg step-ups. Those are really common. But I always start with basic exercises for RunRx, including things like standing in your running pose, like strengthening the positions that you want to be in for your run. This is really important, right? So being able to stand on one leg and balance and hold your line, this should be part of your strength training because this is where you want to be when you run. So it's important to strengthen that position. And then my running action is pulling my foot up. So I want to make sure I strengthen that running action. So then I want to do exercises where I include the pulling action of my hamstring, which of course includes standing, standing and pulling. So right now already there's two exercises, standing in my running pose, and then of course adding the pull. And then of course you can make it, progress it to going a little bit harder, but always just think about starting with foundation exercises, or sometimes they're called functional exercises. And that's the thing we do with RunRx. I really teach the basic of running, the base of running, the pose, the fall, the pull, but I also teach you how to do things like squat, because I hear this a lot. Why do I need to do squats for running? Well, you don't really need to do squats for running. You need to do squats for just hip strength and stability. And then if you can't do squats, I'll teach you a hip hinge. So everything has an intent. So that's kind of fun. And by the way, I start everybody on holding squats. And this is kind of fun because, let me move this. This will come into play too. But in the beginning, I coach everyone like if you've never done a squat before, which is kind of the way you should think about running. So in the squat, where's your body weight? It's on the ball of your feet, but you should be able to wiggle your toes and you can feel the whole foot is touching the ground. So that's step one. Where am I? So there you are. Your knees are able to bend. See, your knees are free. This is very similar to ready stance in running. And then I'm holding on to something. You could even have a chair behind you. I'm not going to do a whole squat complex because I have this already for you. But listen, if you hold this line up and you keep your body lifted and you think about what is squatting. Squatting is sitting, right? So I'm going to sit, but I'm holding on here. And then I feel like I've dropped to my squat. My hip crease is below the top of my knee. Weight still in the ball of the foot. I'm going to press my feet into the ground, lift my torso. And then I start to think about that movement. On the way down, then you can think about pull your stomach in, press your feet down, squeeze the glute as you lift up. See, that's the action I want, is that muscle, that glute muscle. So pull your stomach in, squeeze your glutes. Pull your stomach in, squeeze your glutes. So then you're teaching yourself a pattern. That's really what squatting is about. However, then you can get a little stronger and you think, okay, I don't need to hang on so much, but I'll just leave it here in case I need it. So then I'm like, pull my stomach in, squeeze my butt. Pull my stomach in, squeeze my butt. Still feeling it. Now let me do it without having to talk to my muscles. Can I just do a squat and do the movement and get into a rhythm? See? Now I'm just squatting with a rhythm. And then if I want to do a heavier squat, it'll be a slower rhythm. But the idea is first learn how to squat. So one, it doesn't scare you. So you're not worried about I'm going to hurt myself. And you don't have to progress like the speed I just went. But to understand that if I work on a movement with the intent of the movement, I start to understand why it makes sense. Really what it makes sense for is you're always going to use squats in your life. You're going to sit, you're going to stand. The more comfortable you get with letting your hips just drop naturally and then lift up. See how you held your upper body lifted. If you notice when you squat that your upper body comes forward, then this is also going to be part of why you need to stretch. So strength and stretch really go together. So if you struggle a lot with being able to hold your body lifted, then you know I need to work on opening my hips, hip openers we call it. If you have no struggle with lifting up, but you're like, whoo, I struggle with bending my knees and I really have to work on getting my hips to come back, then that tells you, okay, I need to do some more hip specific strength exercises like glute bridges and hip lifts, which we all offer in the RunRx workout. There's like a RunRx reboot, by the way. It's on the YouTube channel, and it takes you through these basic exercises. But imagine that when you're standing to go run, right, and you're on this one leg, 1,500, it's 1,500 steps a mile. You want all those muscle patterns to be working, right? So ideally in running, you kind of want to do nothing or very little and let the body do what it's supposed to do. So your job is to hold this line, hold this, body goes forward, you pull your foot up. Everything else happens on its own. So you need that when your foot touches down and you're here, these glutes are on, these quads are working, your hips are open, like all of these things that you have to work on outside of running to make sure they're happening while you run. But the best part is I like to keep everything pretty simple. So just like running, it's pose, fall, pull. And then you just work on those three elements for running, right? So the same thing, like you don't have to go spend an hour stretching or an hour doing strength training. You want to just do a few intentional movements. So like for example, all of the RunRx training plans have the runs you have to do and the strength. And then if people want to go do more strength, great. Go do all the strength you want. But for running, I only ask people to do very basic body weight functional movements, but I teach it really clearly. So we have things like plank pulls, and we have, because they're all connected to the running. So something like even, right, we always hear runners need to do planks, and then I'll do something like shoulder taps. And so everything that you learn somehow goes into your running. So I want to make sure you understand you do need to do strength training for running. It just doesn't have to be a whole nother volume session. Just having some good basic strength as part of your training goes a long way. So again, we have the RunRx Reboot. It's on YouTube, or of course, if you join us, you get the training as part of your training plans, or even just the immersion. And then of course, you can see we've got a bunch of the strength exercises on the app and and on the YouTube. And then I want to go into stretching. And I think a lot of us age into stretching. And I'm just being really honest. Because when I first started running, I was in my 20s. Well, I was in college, so I guess I was in late teens, early 20s. And you really could just warm up as you went. And I think that I did that for years. And so stretching for us was kind of like post-run. You might do a little bit beforehand, but most of it is you start your run, and then you'd pick up your pace as you went, and that's kind of how you warmed up. And then afterwards, you might do a few stretches. And for most of us, until we get injured or until we realize the benefits of really doing some good, active, lengthening work, I'm gonna call it, sometimes I think we just skip it because it doesn't feel good, or we don't feel the benefit. Or same thing here as kind of the strength training. We think, well, if I only have 5 minutes, is it worth it? Because I remember when I first started running, again, like I said, I wasn't big into the stretching. I was a lot younger. And then when I got more into it, people started saying, oh, I'm going to add yoga, which is great, but it's a whole nother hour of movement. And so again, I don't need to do an hour, but I need to do consistent work. And this is like where the toys come in, by the way. So in the recent years, I've gotten one of these. It's a calf stretcher. I've used this for about 10 years, my favorite roller. And this is the original trigger point, which works just fine. And then also I wanted to show you guys that as I've gotten in my 50s, I encourage and tell you, everyone, yoga bolster, pillow, this is a mat. When you start to feel like I need support under my knees, then use it. You know, it's kind of the same as like learning how to squat with a support. If you feel like I need help getting up and down, then use it. And then you start working on the muscles that you need to help you to get up and down. It's really important. So for example, the runner's lunge, which is a fantastic stretch. Okay, so I'm going to put my knee pad here. And this is the runner's lunge. So the idea is you want to be able to really lengthen your legs. You want range of motion in your hips, because when you run on the ground, remember you're in that running pose. But in flight, you want your legs to separate. And if you really never practice your legs being separated, they're not going to separate when you're in flight. So that is the idea behind the runner's lunge. So then you're like, okay, well then that makes sense, right? I need to practice that. So then also I want to make sure that it feels good, right? So you can have your pad here. And then the other thing that like we promote is doing hip strength exercises in a kneeling position. So a lot of what is a lot of fun for runners, and I love doing this after a run, before a run, but really after a run, is doing a combination of strength and stretching. So, I mean, I can be here, see, I can tighten up this glute and do a set of balance lifts, and then it's a glute strength exercise here, do 5 or 10, and then relax back into my lunge. And that's kind of the stuff that I promote, and I really encourage people to do, because again, I want to be able to, again, have a full range of motion in my run. I'm here. If I need help here, I take it. And then again, staying here, and I do a lot of things like work on the upper body. So the idea is to help you learn to hold your body upright. This is what we lose when we get older. It's the ability to hold this upright. And then staying back here, squeezing the glute, and then doing some balance. So all of a sudden, I'm getting a combination of stretching, of strength, balance, making sure my glutes work. You see how much benefit there is? So again, how is that going to help me when I run? A lot, because my hips will stay stable, my glutes will stay on, I'll be able to hold my torso up. All of those things are going to benefit you in your run. And the idea is a little bit goes a long way, which means I don't have to do, again, hours, but it has to be consistent. So for example, like in the immersion, I have everything in like little 5-minute blocks, because I'm like, if you'll do 5 minutes of strength, you'll do 5 minutes of stretch, roll, dynamic movement. A lot of times you'll want to do some more, because you'll start to feel how good that feels, right? Same thing, 5 minutes of drills. It's your run that you want to spend the time on. So understand how you can do these little bites, I call them, but also you can make them longer, don't worry. People that stay in the membership, I put workout programs for them. For people that want to do more strength training, and 100%, we have that. But in the beginning, think about, it's not a myth that you have to strength train. What's the myth is that you have to do high volume strength training or even heavy strength training. You have to really start with just your body weight and with intentional strength training for your run. Same thing with stretching. I don't need to do an hour of stretching, but I do need to make sure I put myself in those positions of lengthening, right? Especially with my hips, to be able to have that nice flight phase in your run. So again, you'll find a lot of this just already free on our app or even on the YouTube channel. Then of course, if you join us, then I will be checking on your form, not just on your run, but also on your strength and self-care. All right, guys, thanks so much for listening. Thank you if you've subscribed. If you have any comments or questions, please post. And of course, share this if you've got friends that want to run pain-free. Thank you.